Ziad Hoorzook finds himself at the center of a storm, facing serious accusations of terrorism financing. The South African businessman is accused of violating the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Act, or POC-DETARA. This law prohibits providing financial support for terrorist activities, carrying severe penalties. Hoorzook's case has gripped the nation, raising questions about international security and the use of cryptocurrency in illicit activities. Hoorzook was arrested at his Johannesburg home on January 3, 2025, following an extensive investigation by the Hawks, South Africa's Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation. His arrest sent shockwaves through the community and marked the beginning of a complex legal battle. The prosecution alleges that Hoorzook knowingly provided financial support to an organization with links to terrorism. The case centers around a Bitcoin transaction made by Hoorzook in 2017. This transaction, the prosecution argues, was not a charitable act, but rather a calculated move to fund terrorism. The implications of this case extend far beyond Hoorzook himself, highlighting the growing concern over terrorism financing in the digital age. Hoorzook maintains his innocence, claiming he believed the funds were going to a legitimate charity. His defense team argues that the prosecution's case is flawed and that their client is a victim of circumstance. The outcome of this case will likely set a precedent for future terrorism financing cases, particularly those involving cryptocurrency. At the heart of the prosecution's case against Ziad Hoorzook is a Bitcoin transaction made on November 30, 2017. On that day, Hoorzook used the cryptocurrency exchange Luno to purchase 11,500 Rand worth of Bitcoin. He then transferred these funds to an organization that presented itself as an independent charity. However, the South African authorities allege that this organization is a front for terrorist activities. Investigators claim that this seemingly innocuous charity has connections to two other organizations, both of which are suspected of engaging in terrorism. Furthermore, they argue that the timing of Hoorzook's Bitcoin purchase coincides with a request for financial support from one of these organizations. This request, intercepted by intelligence agencies, explicitly mentioned the need for funds to purchase weapons, provide financial aid to operatives, and support other projects related to their activities in a foreign country. The prosecution believes that this intercepted communication, combined with the suspicious nature of the recipient organization and the timing of Hoorzook's transaction, paints a clear picture of his intent. They argue that he was fully aware of the true nature of the organization he was funding, and that his actions constitute a clear violation of POC-DETARA. Adding further weight to their case, the prosecution points to evidence seized during a search of Hoorzook's Sandton residence on October 3, 2024. While the specifics of this evidence remain sealed under court order, the prosecution suggests that it contains further proof of Hoorzook's knowledge of and involvement in the alleged terrorism financing scheme. They maintain that the evidence collected over years of investigation makes their case undeniably strong. Ziad Hoorzook, from the outset, has vehemently denied the charges leveled against him. He asserts that he believed the Bitcoin transfer he made in 2017 was intended for a legitimate charitable cause. His defense team argues that Hoorzook, a known philanthropist in his community, was simply trying to help those in need and had no knowledge of any connection to terrorism. Hoorzook's lawyer contends that the prosecution's case relies heavily on conjecture and circumstantial evidence. They challenge the assertion that the recipient organization is a front for terrorism, claiming that the prosecution has not provided sufficient evidence to substantiate this claim. Furthermore, they argue that the intercepted communication requesting funds, even if taken at face value, does not definitively prove that Hoorzook was aware of its contents, or that he intended to support any illegal activities. The defense also emphasizes Hoorzook's full cooperation with the South African police services throughout the investigation. They point out that he voluntarily provided information and access to his financial records, which they believe demonstrates his innocence. They contend that a guilty man would have attempted to conceal evidence rather than cooperate openly with authorities. Central to the defense's argument is their claim that Hoorzook's explanation of events is reasonably possibly true. They argue that the prosecution has failed to present a compelling narrative that excludes the possibility of Hoorzook's innocence. They maintain that his actions can be explained by his charitable nature and that the prosecution is attempting to fit a square peg into a round hole by portraying him as a terrorist financier. As the Ziad Hoorzook case progresses, both the prosecution and the defense are preparing for a protracted legal battle. The prosecution, confident in the strength of their evidence, is pushing for a swift trial and a guilty verdict. They believe that the gravity of the charges, combined with the evidence they have amassed, warrants a conviction and a substantial sentence. On the other hand, Hoorzook's defense team is determined to fight tooth and nail to clear his name. They are meticulously dissecting the prosecution's case, searching for weaknesses and inconsistencies. Their primary objective remains securing bail for Hoorzook, allowing him to prepare for his trial outside the confines of jail. The outcome of this case hinges on the strength of the evidence and the persuasiveness of the arguments presented by both sides. The prosecution must convince the court that Hoorzook knowingly and intentionally provided financial support for terrorism. This will require them to establish a clear link between Hoorzook's actions and the alleged terrorist activities of the organizations under scrutiny. The defense, on the other hand, must cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative. They must convince the court that a more plausible explanation exists for Hoorzook's actions, one that does not involve any criminal intent. If they can successfully challenge the prosecution's evidence and present a compelling alternative narrative, they may be able to secure an acquittal for their client. The Ziad Hoorzook case has sent ripples through South Africa and beyond, prompting discussions about the evolving nature of terrorism financing in the digital age. The verdict, regardless of which way it falls, will likely have significant implications for future cases involving allegations of terrorism financing, particularly those involving cryptocurrencies. Furthermore, the case has ignited a debate about the balance between national security concerns and individual rights, a debate that is likely to continue long after the final verdict is delivered.